So moving on, just kind of outside of the DFW area, but still what you would call, I guess, local. There's a few spots in Denton, which is, again, another college town. That's where UNT is. It's long been a great hub for music. UNT is known, worldwide as a music kind of jazz school. So a lot of great musicians end up there and end up starting bands there and go on to, greater things. But there's some really good, local venues there that I just wanted to, talk about real quickly. The first one is Dan's. So Dan's opened up in 1995 by Dan Mojica with a total investment of $12,700. He worked at the airport, DFW airport, fueling up planes. But he was getting really stressed out and burnt out on that. He didn't want to keep doing that. So he cashed out his 401k and then got a couple thousand more from his grandma and opened up Dan's really just as a bar. It was an oyster bar. Didn't necessarily have any plans to be a music venue when he started out. But being in Denton, like I just mentioned, it's such a hub of music. Any building, any business that has an open space for music potentially to take place, if it's in Denton, it's probably going to happen at some point. And so it did. Eventually it kind of just morphed into, being a live music venue in addition to a bar. Did close in the wake of 9/11, just because a lot of people weren't getting out and going to shows, and his bar really felt the impact of that. So he did close down, but then he got a partner and reopened in a bigger space in 2002. Some notable acts that have been through Dan's in the early years, the original location, Leon Russell, who came in and actually said, "Oh, well, we're gonna have to make this stage bigger because it wasn't big enough for what they wanted to do." Chris Knight, one that plays there all the time because they have a really good long-standing relationship, is Slobberbone, which is a local band that goes way, way back. Kind of like alt country, a little bit of rockabilly kind of sound. Very, very good. But also Nora Jones, who went to UT, did not ever play there. But as the story goes, she was sitting at the bar and started, talking to people and actually met and formed her band at Dan's. So that's kind of cool. I've seen, a handful of shows there over the years. David Bazan and Pedro Line, I've seen there. I've seen his side project there overseas, which included one of the members from the other band I've seen there, which is Centromatic. But yeah, it's just a really cool spot. It's one of those neighborhood bars like we were talking about that also has music, and it's just very intimate and cool, and the sound to me has always been on point there. So yeah, have you been to Dan's, Coy? Have you seen shows there?
So it was a long time ago, which
Mhm.
means my memory isn't great, but I know this other one's on your list, but it's either Dan's, and I'm pretty sure it's Dan's. But it's either Dan's or Rubber Gloves. I've been to one or the other, and I'm pretty sure it's Dan's. But I have a fuzzy memory. I was gonna say a distinct memory, but let's be honest. I have a fuzzy memory of seeing Dexter Freebish
Okay.
in Denton, and it had to have been one of those places, and I feel like it was Dan's. But
Yeah.
based off of the pictures of these venues that I've seen since, sure, let's go with Dan's. I've been to Dan's.
Gotcha.
Isn't that the great thing about some of these videos? Is like, have I been there? I don't know. It's a
Yeah.
bar. I can vouch for that. It is a bar.
Right. Right. Yeah, for sure. Well, the other one I want to mention is Andy's, which is kind of the same way. And I've only seen actually one show of Andy's, but it does, have a pretty strong history and Denton as a venue. It resides in one of the oldest buildings in Denton. It's called the Pascal Building, which was built in 1877. It was originally a grocery store. The movie theater at one point during the 70s was an adult film theater. Became Andy's music venue or Andy's bar in 1994. But unfortunately, it is set to close its doors at the end of this month. So sadly, Andy's will be no longer. There's actually a show there coming up at the end of this month, which we need to talk about. Because if y'all are available, we should definitely go. So that way you can experience.
Because
Yeah, so
I've been to
Phoenix
Andy's,
Andy's.
I haven't seen a show at Andy's, so yeah, I should probably do that before they close. And end of this month is February 2025. In case you're listening in the future, I have been upstairs Pascal's, which you mentioned. It's the something about Pascal early.
Yeah, and Pascal's is actually Pascal's bar. Well, the building is called the Pascal building, but Pascal's bar is no longer.
Yeah,
But Andy's just operates all of it. The basement, which is where I've seen a show, and then they have the ground level. But Andy's has taken over the upstairs bar as well. They did it a couple years ago.
I have a lot of fond memories of Pascal's, but I've also gone to Andy's, but I haven't seen music there. So yeah, if we have one last shot at this, we should go for sure.
So then the other one I wanted to mention is Rubber Gloves in Denton. It was active from 1997 to 2016. Shut down 2016, but then reopened in 2019 and still going strong today. They actually have a lot of shows. I mean, they do a lot of like underground, kind of like punk, that kind of stuff there. But, back in the day, I went there a ton. Saw my brother's band there a bunch of times, but then a lot of other bands that rolled through there as well. No one super, super notable that I would, really shout out, but it was just a cool space. It started out as just, as the name suggests, it was a rehearsal space, but then it just became a place where people would actually come and pay to see, live music as well. But yeah, I'm glad it opened that back up because it's kind of a bummer when it closed down. But yeah, I think it's still big with the kids. My daughter, who's out in Denton now at UNT, she's gone there to see a show or two, so she knows of it. So it's kind of cool that it's still alive and kicking.
Nice.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, I think, for the local DFW/Denton scene. So
before we hit the road to outside of DFW, what was the venue you said was featured in a movie earlier? I thought you mentioned a movie.
RoboCop?
Yeah, RoboCop.
Yeah.
Oh, that was Sons of Herman Hall.
Sons of Herman RoboCop. So yeah, if you ever wondered why the Detroit and RoboCop looks like Dallas, it's because it was shot here. But that reminded me, Billy Bob's, some movies that were shot at Billy Bob's, Necessary Roughness, which also was shot at UNT. All the football scenes were shot there.
Yeah.
And then Sylvester Stallone's Over the Top also had some scenes.
Academy Award winning right there.
Yeah, so great movies. And also the TV show Dallas it featured Billy Bob's quite a few times. So that reminded me to hit on that before we leave DFW and take a little road trip south to want to hit Austin next. That's a pretty big music town. I think we have a lot of venues to talk about there.
John, you've seen some shows in Austin, right?
I have 2 shows. I've taken the trek down there. One I think is world renowned. And for the first 2 years being a dumb Texan, I pronounced it Anton's, but I guess it's Antones or Antoine's.
I think it's Antoine's.
Does anybody know?
I don't know.
I mean, we're already pretty famous for mispronouncing things.
We might as well
And I was thinking about this earlier because I was like, this episode lends itself to maybe mispronouncing some venues and maybe some artists and some cities even. And that got me thinking, Texas just lends itself to that. I think Texas is based on not being able to say the word you want to say anyway. Because if you look at some of these towns and the way they're spelled, and the way they're pronounced, we're just fitting right in when we can't say stuff. Because it's like the more complicated the spelling, the easier the pronunciation got. They just like skipped whole letters. Like that's green.
Yeah, I'm gonna circle back on that because there's one that I'm gonna talk about.
Yeah, I've got one too on my list. So let's not.
It's probably the same.
Let's own how much we mispronounce on this show.
Of course, I mean
it's like Texas thing.
Mispronunciations is in one of the titles of our show.
So have you been to Antoine's before?
I have not.
I'm gonna put it up there with Dan's and Rubber Gloves. I've been to Austin and I've seen shows, and it was either Emo's or Antoine's, or maybe neither of those. But I've seen shows in Austin. I have a few I actually remember and can say I've been to, but those are a little fuzzier memories for me.
So the one thing I remember about the venue is that it seemed like it was extremely narrow and long, but good sound. I still was able to, see the stage, even though it was I remember it as being narrow. It might not have been. Maybe it was the drinking narrowing my eyes, but it was a good venue, and obviously it had history to it. So it was, super cool to visit. And what is it? 6th Street is right there. So it's, right on 6th Street or just off of 6th Street from what I remember, but great little venue. And then I visited a place called Hotel Vegas, which it was an outdoor kind of patio venue. And I saw, let's mispronounce this, I believe it's Amel and the Sniffers. I saw them on a summer night, so it was nice and sweaty and hot, but they put on a fiery show along with a couple of other bands, one from Austin and another one from Australia. But it was kind of a neat little, very compact venue in the back. So it only held probably a couple hundred people in it, but very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's one of those stuff you could do a whole episode on. There's so many venues, and us not being local to there have barely scratched the surface, I think, on Austin music venues, but we'll do our best here.
I mean, one of the most, probably notable ones down there is the Continental Club, as far as like a historic, rock venue, but I have not been there. I mean, I've walked by it numerous times, but I've not actually seen a show there. I might have even went in there and had a drink, but I've never seen a show there. The two that I have seen shows at in Austin are Stubbs. I saw Dinosaur Jr. there. I've seen Dinosaur Jr. a lot.
Wow.
I love Dinosaur Jr. They're fantastic, especially live. And then Emos, which is another kind of a pretty big one, pretty notable one in Austin. Yeah, I saw Explosives in the Sky at Emo, and that was fantastic. It was kind of when they were first kind of taking off, and it was a great show. But yeah, I mean, Austin obviously it's the
music mecca.
It's the capital of Texas, if not the world. Yeah, so
yeah, I've probably been to Stubbs the most down there myself. Saw Guster there. Seen some good shows down there. I've been for even work trips now. Like if it's like if I go to a conference down in Austin, and it'll end up being like they booked Stubbs and they had just local musicians come play, and that's really cool. But yeah, I mean, you can get some great barbecue for lunch and then head on to the backyard and watch a concert.
Yeah, some great breweries down there as well.
So so many good breweries. We could do a whole episode on Austin venues and breweries. We probably should, but we'll just make this one a giant episode. I'm sure one day we'll circle back on topics and come back to this. But speaking of other episodes, we could do a whole episode on festivals. There's been plenty of Texas festivals, and of course music festivals. In Dallas, I mentioned Edge Fest already a few times, which was a pretty big local one. But of course, down in Austin, they have Austin City Limits Fest. But Austin City Limits is a venue that, is a more intimate theater. Yeah, another one is Mohawk. I haven't been there, but I know.
Oh, yeah, Mohawk. Yeah.
Another pretty famous one down there. I mean, there's a ton. We could go on and on. Only other place I'll mention, because I've been to it, Frank Erwin Center, which is on the campus of University of Texas. It's where the men's and women's basketball teams played for many years, would also sometimes host shows, the bigger show, like arena shows. So I saw U2 at Reunion Arena in Dallas, and then went down to Austin and saw them at Frank Erwin, then came back and saw them at American Airlines Center in Dallas again. This was all during the All That You Can't Leave Behind tour, but I was really glad I got to see a show there, because I just learned that it actually has been demolished in the last couple years. I knew the basketball team's now played at the Moody Center, which is state of the art, but I didn't realize it's been demolished. It's been a while since I guess I've been down to that part of Austin. So it was this big, it looked like I think they called it the Super Drum, because it just looked like this big drum, kind of cylinder looking shape, very prominent part of the campus landscape. And so yeah, that's now I think part of Dell. I think Dell is expanding onto that part of the campus, their corporate offices. But yeah, so I wanted to give a shout out to Frank Erwin Center I never saw a basketball game or Final Four game there, but I did see U2 there, and it was pretty neat.
Yeah. So the only other Texas venue I have on my list here is another one that I've never seen a show at. I have been there, went inside, kind of checked it out, but I haven't seen a show there. But I really, really want to. And it's in Gruene, Texas, which is New Braunfels, basically. It's a little tiny, small town just on the edge of New Braunfels. And that's Gruene Hall, which is a historic venue. I mean, people outside of Texas just know about it for sure. It's built in 1878 as a social hall for tenant farmers. It's the oldest continuously operating dance hall in Texas. It's been instrumental in starting many great careers, songwriters and musicians, including Lyle Lovett, George Strait, Hal Ketchum, Robert O'Keefe, Lucinda Williams, and Ryan Bingham. 2019, ZZ Top did interviews and played live music for many parts of the documentary, That Little Old Band from Texas. So, super cool spot. I definitely want to go see a show there at some point. It's really interesting, kind of like how it's set up. Like you walk in the front doors and the bar's right there in the front, which is kind of a weird kind of setup. And then they have a really cool like outdoor patio space. But yeah, I mean, it looks super cool. I can't wait to actually see a show there. It's legendary. Have either of y'all been to Gruene Hall?
No, it's on my list because it was, in my mind, the most famous Texas venue.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I passed by it once, but I didn't realize what I was driving by at the time.
Yeah.
Right. No, I haven't been to New Braunfels actually, so I have a lot to.
Yeah, New Braunfels is actually pretty cool.
I know. I've always wanted to go. When I was a kid, it was all about Schlitterbahn.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was what I was alluding to, speaking of mispronunciation. So Gruene, you could mispronounce that, but you nailed it, Graham. Gruene Hall in Gruene, Texas, which is now part of New Braunfels, which is another one you could easily mispronounce the way that's spelled. But yeah, I would love to see it. I'm glad it's still around. I mean, we talked about some of these venues that were only around for months or few years, but this one's been around since the 1800s, and that's incredible. Yeah. Especially that it has a 6,000 square foot. It's huge. It's big and it's old, and stuff like that. I think especially in America, it's so where things get demolished and paved over and become a parking lot or become an expansion for something else.
Yeah.
So often it's so great that we still have some of these historic landmarks. I think Billy Bob's is one of them too, even though it's only from 1981. It's still that, that's what I think of when I think of our most historical ones. And I have one more, which is, I think, the inspiration for Billy Bob's, which is just outside of Houston. I alluded to it earlier, in Pasadena, Texas. Mentioned it also when we were talking about Gilley's in Dallas. So the original Gilley's was 1970 and had the Guinness Book of World Records, world's largest honky tonk, which now Billy Bob's claims that, but yeah, it's not around anymore, so I think they can claim it. I was trying to figure out if they took over the Guinness record or not at Billy Bob's, but I couldn't verify that. But this is the venue down in Houston or Pasadena that inspired the movie Urban Cowboy, the John Travolta movie. So this was Mickey Gilley and I forget the other guy that started this place, and they called it Gilley's because they were going to feature, like, Mickey was going to be the house artist, house band. He was going to play it, but it had the indoor rodeo. It had multiple mechanical bulls. I mean, it was just as big and fit just as many as Billy Bob's, and it came out a decade, plus more earlier than Billy Bob's did. So when you think about Billy Bob's, it's really Gilley's. I think that was there first. Inspired that movie. Everyone kind of knew about it after that. It was packed all the time in the 70s. It ended up closing down. It ended up getting demolished, like a lot of the things we've talked about. But the Gilleys in Dallas, Mickey Gilley did open that one up, and I think he's tried to maybe franchise and open ones other places. But the Gilleys in Dallas is definitely not the same as this Gilley's, where it had indoor rodeo and mechanical bulls, but yeah. So I did want to definitely mention, I'm glad you mentioned Gruene Hall, but I had Gilley's on my list, and also in the Houston area, just because I've been there. Again, I saw a comedy show there. Graham, we went to this, but the Mart Financial Center at Sugarland. I thought that was a really great venue. I would say it's along the lines of
That was nice.
like a Verizon Theater kind of
Texas Trust,
Texas Trust that we have up here. But yeah, great venue, very modern. So I would throw that one out there as well. But yeah, how about the rest of the state for you, John? Do you have
one more thing? And I'm kind of going backwards here, but I just thought of it, and I don't want to leave it out because I know like we'll get roasted if we do, which is fine. I want people to comment if we did miss anything. Obviously, we're not going to cover everything, and we want to hear your feedback and stuff. On what you think should have been included that wasn't. But Longhorn Ballroom, which is the Dallas venue, was built in 1950 for country music legend Bob Wills, who we've talked about before, and his Texas Playboys. Was originally named the Bob Wills Ranch House. Was managed for a time by Jack Ruby. Interesting little note there. That was one of the greatest venues of its day. Hosted a wide variety of acts from Willie Nelson, Loretta Lynn, Merle Haggard, Charlie Pride, Patsy Cline, George Jones, world-renowned jazz, blues, and R&B artists like B.B. King, Ray Charles, Nat King Cole, James Brown. And it did close down, not sure when, but it recently reopened, I think just last year. I want to say within the last year or two, it reopened. So I've never been there. I don't think any of us have ever been there, but I would like to definitely go check that place out.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that too, Graham, because that was on my list and I forgot, and I haven't been there and want to go. I think that's another one we should definitely go see a show there. And I'm glad you mentioned Jack Ruby also, because he was borderline on whether he was going to make my notes or not, because, I mean, for those who don't know Dallas history, the JFK assassination is a big part of our, dark past. But yeah, Jack Ruby was a local club owner. So if you're going to talk, music venues and you want to go back that far, Jack Ruby is definitely a player in that scene. And of course, he shot Lee Harvey Oswald, further making it, an unresolved kind of issue of we couldn't just have this nice little trial and everything be tied up with a nice bow, of course. And you never want to be a city where a president gets killed in. But yeah, so the Red Jacket, I'll go back to the Red Jacket. I'm almost positive the Red Jacket had a little room off to the side called the Ruby Room. I'm pretty sure it was at the Red Jacket because it was, I think, in the lore that he had owned that building at one point and ran a club out of there. But yeah, he did a lot of like burlesque and stuff in the 60s, which was pretty popular back then. So music adjacent. I think it was more about burlesque than music, but they played jazz and teased did strip teases. But yeah, Jack Ruby is we could probably again do a whole nother episode on Jack Ruby and his influence on Dallas back in the day.
Another note on the Longhorn Brown, because I'm just now looking through like their history on their website, because I didn't think of it when I was doing my original notes, unfortunately. But in 1978, the Longhorn Ballroom reached international fame for being one of 6 venues in America to host the Sex Pistols on their only U.S. tour.
Dang. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, I've traveled around Texas, and we've got some beautiful cities. Never seen a concert in Houston, even though I've been to Houston dozens of times, and I'll be there again next week. Never seen a concert in San Antonio. Haven't Laredo, El Paso. I mean, I'm sure that there's certain music venues in those locales. Haven't been to those, to concerts in those cities. But neither one of you have mentioned one that I have been to that for me personally was a musical mecca. I don't know if you consider it a venue, but it is a place where music is played. Lukenbach, Texas.
I knew you were going to say that, and I have not been to Lukenbach, but it's one of those places I want to go. And we all want to go to Lukenbach, Texas.
Well, there's not a lot there, but
correct. Probably why I haven't quite made it there yet. But
I dragged my family there. When we first moved to Texas, we were down around that area. So we drove about 40 minutes out of the way to Lukenbach, and there is actually a place for live music. I think it's kind of like a saloon or bar type area, but they do have live music there. Did not see Willie and Waylon, unfortunately, but that's who I was looking for, obviously. But I did make the pilgrimage out there, and we kind of hung out for a few hours, went by the gift shops and all that stuff. But yeah, that's the extent of my concerts.
It's probably way too advanced technology for Lukenbach, but they should at least have like holograms of like Willie and Waylon just like playing at all times there.
And Tupac.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
do mariachis on the Riverwalk count? Because again, it's more that I've only been to San Antonio a couple of times. I haven't seen a concert there. I'm sure there are many we're missing in Houston, San Antonio. Let us know about those areas, because that's genuinely something we would like to learn about. But I've heard great music there. I joke, but literally the mariachis on the Riverwalk are pretty great. And then the Pearl District, which is bringing it back to beer, is like Texas' oldest brewery, but it's no longer in operation, but it's been turned into a hotel. I bet Pearl beer is an old Texas beer, and now it's a hotel and kind of a shopping district, restaurants. It's a really cool area. When you're in San Antonio, go to the Pearl District. It's fantastic. And I say that because I heard wonderful live music that was from like local musicians there, but I went and looked them up, they were actually like, oh, this guy's played in New York. He's like it's not just the local guy.
Right.
He's just in San Antonio now because he's like, in his 70s or 80s, but he's still like amazing. So yeah, there's definitely like, I feel just from my, little bit of that I've been in San Antonio, there's got to be a great scene there. And I know Houston has it too. I just, again, haven't been down there as much and never on like a music trip. I don't get to take enough music trips. Usually my vacations revolve around, just stuff with the family, but we try to fit in food and beer and breweries. Like I've done a lot of brewery trips, but music needs to be more on my vacation itinerary.
Texas Tracks and Tabs road trip. I'm telling you, it needs to be like probably 2 or 3 weeks.
Let's take this show on the road, guys.
Yeah, we're just going to go all over.
I passed up seeing the Deftones in San Antonio one of the last times I was there. Sometimes when you get back to the hotel, it's tough to muster up enough energy to go
get that
out.
Second wind.
Yeah.
The second wind eluded you.
So we can talk a little bit about outside of Texas.
Let's go nationwide, worldwide. What do you want to talk about?
Well, yeah, I'm kind of curious. Have you guys seen any shows outside of the great state of Texas?
Not enough, but
I hear that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to preface this by saying that going to see concerts and music is just something that I personally prioritized in my life. Some people have passions for buying guitars and buying cars or whatever your passion is, but concerts have been mine. And so when my job takes me traveling, one of the things I always do on my phone is check to see, are there any shows where I happen to be going for work? And more oftentimes than not, there's nothing, playing, there's no shows, there's nothing of interest. But through the years, I've been fortunate. I've, been able to see some shows that I probably normally wouldn't have been able to see just because I'm traveling for work. And, because I prioritize that, I've kind of had an opportunity to see concerts. And I was sharing this with you, Graham. I counted them up right before the show, 12 different states and 6 different countries. So I've kind of been around to see different venues all over the place. And some of them are bucket list venues that you'll probably be very familiar with, but some of them are fairly unfamiliar and probably kind of the smaller venues in those cities. But I'm curious to hear where you guys have traveled to first to see, outside of Texas, where have you seen some shows?
Well, I know that a few years ago, U2 skipped the great state of Texas on one of their album tours. So we went all the way to Tulsa, Oklahoma, which I lived there for a little bit, but it was a long time ago, and Tulsa's come a long way since then. I was actually like, oh, this is kind of a cool town now. And I don't know, some people say it's always been a cool town, and that's fine. I really didn't enjoy my first go around in Tulsa too much, but when I went back more recently, I was like, this is pretty cool. So we went to so it's funny, I call it the Bach because the emails I got from them after I went to this concert, they kept saying rock the BOK. So I assumed they
Makes sense.
Bach because that completes the rhyme. But locals up there, because I do know a few people up there are saying like they don't call it the Bach, they call it the BOK. But yeah, that's like, I would compare that to like maybe bigger than Dickies, smaller than AAC. But yeah, I think they do sporting events there. I think the hockey team, maybe like a minor league hockey team plays there, but they have a lot of concerts there. Like, again, since we got tickets to that, I'm now on their email list and I'm like, dang, like, yeah. But there were other places when like that, I don't know if they're still around and I don't know if I'll remember the name of them, but when I was living there in the early or late 90s, there was like the local places that the alternative bands would play at that, yeah, I never went to shows there, but I always, knew the older kids that would go. But yeah, and then the beer scene in Oklahoma is pretty great. And there's a Prairie tap room pretty close to BOK. It has like great food, and then Prairie ales, which are in beers, and Prairie is one of my favorite breweries. They make some really great stuff. And then you can go to Oklahoma City and catch Prairie over there too. And of course, Rough Tail, one of my favorites.
Also in Tulsa, American Solera.
Yes. Yeah. American Solera. So yeah, that's definitely the closest I've traveled for a concert, but I've gone a little bit further out, but I haven't done a whole lot. But Graham, I know you went to that one, but
yeah, I went to that one in Tulsa with you. Other than that, the only two outside of Texas I haven't been to would be Hollywood Bowl, which was recently. It was back in October. I went to visit a friend out there, and we went and saw The War on Drugs and The National, as well as Lucius. Lucius was the opener. Fantastic show. Really cool venue. I mean, just the setting, up in the Hollywood Hills out there. And I mean, it was great. The weather was perfect, obviously, man. No better place probably to have an outdoor venue, than in Southern California. Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, sound was good, especially considering it's an outdoor venue, and it was just a great experience. I would love to go back. I know they always have really great shows there. So if I'm ever out there again and a show comes up, I would definitely go see it at the Hollywood Bowl. The other one, which we both went to together to see U2 yet again, was the Sphere in Vegas, which, as far as big venues go, I'm kind of ruined probably for life for like any other, venues of that size because of just the overall experience that it was. Visually astonishing. I mean, just like there's nothing like it, but also and we've discussed it on the show before, but the sound, I mean, the sound was just impeccable. Like it's designed in such a way that, the sound, like traditionally, like you want to sit by the soundboard because the sound's going to be best there. But this whole venue is designed that it sounds the same no matter where you sit. And it's just amazing. I mean, I've never experienced such crystal clear, just perfectly balanced sound in a venue, especially of that size, because it is such a challenge typically with larger venues. The interesting thing too, I thought about it was like when you were outside on the concourse, you couldn't hear what was going on inside the bowl part, inside the arena part, which was crazy to me. I was like, how does this work? But yeah. Anyway, what did you think?
Yeah, it's an auditory miracle.
Yeah,
that it's so crystal clear and not quiet, but you don't have like concert ring or anything that comes up with a loud show. Just incredible. Yeah, we've talked about it in past episodes, but yeah, just interesting that U2, opened that venue up with their residency. Since then, we've had Fish, I think, came in next, and then we had Dead and Company, which is Grateful Dead and their friends, and Eagles. And then might be missing some, but I know Backstreet Boys just announced they're going to be doing a residency there. So we'll have to road trip Backstreet Boys. No? Okay. Well, can't say
it's funny.
It's kind of a waste of the venue, in my opinion, to have Backstreet Boys there. But
it'll sell
We're
out.
going to hear from listeners on that.
no offense to the
Yeah.
Backstreet Boys fans out there.
Every woman over 45 will flock to Vegas to go see that. So
it's going to be off the chain. And Vegas is already kind of a gathering place for that demographic. And so all of them are going to, it's like they have a capital within their capital now. It's like good luck. All the young men who go out there.
So it's weird, man. Like I was in Las Vegas last week and my hotel room overlooked the Sphere. So like I had a clear cut view to the Sphere, and this is like the third or fourth time that this has happened where I've gone there and there hasn't been a show for me to see. But there is a tour I think you can go into, but it's just not the same as, going to see an actual concert.
Did they have the U2 film playing there?
I don't know. Honestly, like I know it one morning when I woke up, it was a huge SpongeBob. So I don't know if something's going on. Or SpongeBob.
You never know. The outside is rarely indicative of what's going on the inside of that place.
Yeah. But
What I've seen of the YouTube film, though, it looks pretty awesome. It looks
Yeah.
pretty close to actually experiencing the actual show, which is great.
So the Edge watched that film at the Sphere, and he basically said, like, this is the first U2 concert I've been to, like as
Yeah.
an audience member. And he was like, I guess I picked the right venue to do that as. But yeah, like from the pictures I've seen of people who watch the film version that they show, because it's also like a special movie theater. I think of like Omni, or we have like what's the one at the planetarium in Fort Worth?
IMAX.
That is the Omni. But yeah, IMAX, Omni. We have
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and you mentioned that, and U2's always been on kind of the cutting edge of things, so it made sense that they played the Sphere, because we saw the U2 thing, the U2 movie that was in, was it there? Was it at the Omni? We saw a movie. It was like one of their tour movies, but they did it in it's like a 360 IMAX kind of.
I think it was an IMAX. I don't know if it was Omni, which Omni is now an IMAX, but it's slightly different because it's the full screen. But yeah, they did their 360 tour. I think they released as an IMAX film. So yeah, I mean, they've been pushing technology since Octum Baby for sure. So it definitely I thought was the most fitting opening act for that venue, or one of the most that they could have gotten. And then I haven't been to Hollywood Bowl, which you mentioned, Graham. But that's definitely been one I've driven by a few times and been like, man, it'd be cool to see a show. I've watched a lot of shows from there, filmed there. But I'll also mention in LA, which again could do a whole episode on LA music venues. Like, don't even we talk about Austin, but like LA is a whole nother thing. And New York's kind of next for me. But they have the, of course, Viper Room, I think would be a pretty infamous maybe place to go see a show at, but anything on Sunset Boulevard.
Is Viper Room still open?
It is still.
Oh, okay.
It is.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that would be cool.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw that in for LA. I'm sure there's a ton more that we
Sure.
But that one was kind of one I thought about if I making a bucket list and was trying to go do destination shows, that'd be a cool one to go to.
There's really only one on my bucket list, and that's Red Rocks.
Yeah.
In there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on my bucket list as well. Again, probably U2 for U2 reasons, although there's been a lot of great shows there.
Yeah.
I had the Dave Matthews double album live from Red Rocks, but U2's Under a Blood Red Sky music film was in heavy rotation when I was growing up. I watched that on VHS and DVD, in fact.
Yeah, the biggest learning experience of going to Red Rocks was the work that you have to do to get into the venue. Nobody tells you about that. It's quite a hike to get up into the actual venue itself. And then when you're in the venue, stair stepping all the way to the top, because you want to obviously see the view around there. On a summer day, you definitely break a sweat. But it was beautiful. And I had the opportunity to see Nine Inch Nails and Soundgarden play in Red Rocks. So to know the history of the venue, like talking about Coy with U2 and just all the different artists that have played in that venue, through the decades. It was just a super cool event. And we had a beautiful night. I mean, Colorado evenings are really beautiful, but yeah, I hiked to the top and, saw the view from up there and could see the stage down below, but the sound was pretty amazing for an outdoor amphitheater. I think that's, it does get credit for its sound, but when you're there, it's pretty damn amazing, like just how good it is. Like, normal amphitheaters don't sound like that.
Right.
So yeah, I got really lucky with that one, but in terms of
amazing breweries in Colorado as well.
Hands down, yeah.
Road trip.
Yeah, my first, not that I think they got acquired, but I can remember the first time I had a fat tire in Colorado. Like it was decades ago, but yeah, some great breweries there. I lived in a couple different pockets around the U.S. So, grew up in the Southeast and lived in Atlanta for quite some time. Went to college in Athens, which is, huge music city in and of itself. We could probably do an episode on just Athens, Georgia musicians. And then, bounced out to Seattle for 16 years. So I've been real fortunate to, visit some really great venues within those three cities, to really be, focused on those cities for long periods of time. But Seattle, I don't know if you're familiar with the Paramount Theater, if you've heard that. Seen many of shows there. I think the last one that I saw was Death Cab for Cutie. They did, I think, a run of a couple different nights at the Paramount, and I happened to catch them one of those nights. Just a beautiful venue. It's one of those classic old-time theaters, and it's very intricate. Like when you look at the artwork that's in there, very similar to the Fox Theater in Atlanta, which is another great venue down there that's similar to the Paramount. And, got to see a bunch of different shows at the Fox Theater back in the day. I think I saw Lenny Kravitz for the first time there, and Kathy Mattea country concert, 311, got to see them there. So saw some great shows in Atlanta, and Masquerade, which was really known for having 3 different levels back in the day. I don't know if they have that today, but there was heaven, hell, and purgatory, where you could go to different levels and experience different things on each level. But that's where I saw the Cranberries back in 1992. They actually had an outdoor kind of concert venue, and you just sit on the lawn and saw the Cranberries play back in the day. So that was super cool. And I think they're still around. I think Masquerade Music Park still exists, but I think it's quite different than what it was like back in the day. And then you probably have heard of the 40 Watt over in Athens, which is known for a long time just having one 40 watt light bulb that lit the entire place. It has a few more lights these days, but it's where REM got its start. And back in college, we could go there and see bands for like $5. Got to see Driving and Crying there one time, which is a Southeast band that I still love. They're one of my favorites of all time. And then, little known fact, there's another music theater, Georgia Theater in Athens. And trying to remember John Mayer's first big hit, No Such Thing. If you go back and watch that video, it was filmed in Georgia Theater in Athens. So he actually kind of got his start in Atlanta and in Athens. That's kind of where he built his name up. And so, that was a great little venue as well. And then, some of the big ones I think you mentioned earlier, Coy, Ryman Theater, which going way back to the beginning of when we started, iconic venue. Like Ryman Theater it looks like an old church. It's the Grand Ole Opry. It's a very unique venue. And when you were talking, Graham, earlier, and when we started, chatting about things that really kind of make the experience negative when seeing a concert, I got to see Jason Isbell, and I had 2 guys standing in front of me that just would not shut up the entire time.
Dude, I've had that experience at a Jason Isbell concert too. It was at the Factory. Like, we almost got in a fight, me and the guys that I was there with, which were guys from my church. But these guys were just such assholes. Like, we asked them to be quiet, and they just would not shut up, or to move themselves to the back by the bar and go talk back there because we're actually trying to watch the show.
Yeah, I don't get it. Especially when you're at the Ryman Auditorium.
Yeah.
You would think that everybody there is paying to go see the band that is playing.
You would.
And these two guys just the entire time just wouldn't shut up. And I asked them to be quiet. The guy that was in front of them asked them to be quiet. And they did eventually shut up, but, it really kind of put a damper on the experience for me. But, still really glad that I had the opportunity to go and see, that venue and see Jason Isbell. It was my first time seeing him. I've had the opportunity to go to MSG in New York City, so Madison Square Garden. I saw Pearl Jam on back-to-back nights in MSG, and that was kind of a bucket list for me that I wanted to, be able to see at least one show there. And then it was actually really cool because Cheap Trick came out for a song one night and Sting came out for another song the other night. So it was just a really great experience. But I think Coy, you made mention of outdoor venues. So we could probably break this down and do a show on just outdoor venues. But, one of the coolest little venues that I've ever been to, and it was a complete accident on our part. We didn't really plan it. We were up in Maine just doing a road trip, and we went to the LL Bean store. And in the summertime, they actually have a concerts series and they have a stage set up. And we happened to be there the same night that Head and the Heart played. And so it was an outdoor concert and it was just a beautiful evening. We were there with the whole family and got to see Head and the Heart play. And that was super cool. Had the opportunity to go to Fenway Park and see a concert at Fenway, as well as in Seattle. It used to be called Safeway Field. Now I think it's T-Mobile Park. But I've been to two different baseball parks for shows. And Fenway being classic for baseball alone, it was just super special to be in a venue like that and be able to see Pearl Jam there several years ago.
I was going to ask, who did you see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
I'm going to stop. I'm going to interrupt you right here.
Yeah.
How many times have you seen Pearl Jam?
It's excessive.
Right?
20.
20? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's not that bad. Okay, I thought it was more.
Yeah, it's better than 80.
What?
I know some people that have seen him like 80 times.
Oh, yeah.
But, a couple others that just kind of stand out. There's a little theater in Los Angeles called the El Rey Theater. And didn't really know anything about it. But I always think when I go to Los Angeles of just big venues and just, seeing things like the Hollywood Bowl, which I've been to the Hollywood Bowl as well. But the El Rey Theater was kind of one of these smaller venues that's kind of off the strip. And I originally went to go see a guy that I met in Seattle named Jordan, who's in a band called Rainwolf. He was opening for a little band with the name The Pixies. And so my intent was to just see Jordan play and then probably leave, but it was a cool venue. I hadn't seen the Pixies before, so I hung out with Jordan, and he was actually working the merch booth trying to sell merch, and then saw the Pixies as well. But it's a really cool older theater just in Los Angeles. I haven't been to a lot of the places that you mentioned, Coy, on the Sunset Strip. I passed by the Viper Room. I passed by like all those places that all the old 80s hair bands used to play. Never been into them, but I definitely have seen them from the outside. And, I think that just in my experience going to a lot of these venues, like the big venues are fun, like the MSGs are great to check off the lists, but some of the best concerts I've been to have been like the El Rey Theater in LA, just the smaller venues. It's more intimate. Usually you get closer to the band. The sound is usually better for you. So, just in my experience, I kind of enjoy those smaller venues more than the big venues. But sometimes in order to get the big name acts, you got to go to those big venues.
Yeah, I agree. Catching a great band in a small venue you got to do it on the upward curve of their momentum, and it's harder to do once they get big. But you mentioned Madison Square Garden. I haven't been to, but it's a bucket list venue. I just feel like it's, when you talk about world famous venues, it's on there. But I'll add a Radio City Music Hall. I think it'd be cool to see a show there as well.
Very cool.
Even Carnegie Hall in New York. There's again, you could do like a 2-part episode of
New York.
The Bowery Ballroom, I remember always seemed like all the bands I really liked in the early aughts were playing Bowery, and so I was like, that'd be really cool to see them. In Memoriam CGGB, it
All
would
right,
be
I was
really
gonna
cool
mention
to see a show there. And I didn't get to go to the Ryman, but I did go to the new Grand Ole Opry location, which is cool because they did take some parts of the stage with them, and so I've stood on the new stage. There's a circle that's actually cut into the new stage. It's wood from the old stage. So I've stood on.
It's very cool.
I've gotten to go up and stand on the stage and heard some local musicians do kind of like a storyteller session where they told the stories behind the songs they wrote, and then they played like an acoustic version of it and sang it. So that was a really cool experience I got to do last year at the new Grand Ole Opry. But that being said, yeah, I haven't gotten to the Ryman, which would be I want to do that for sure. That's another bucket list. They had the pews, I think, some of the pews from the Ryman there at the new Grand Ole Opry too. So it's kind of cool how the audience is like these church pews.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's probably my bucket list for most of the U.S. I think we're leaving out a lot of cities, but those were kind of the highlights that I thought of.
One last story I was going to share is the most unique venue that I think I've ever seen a concert at. And it's a friend of mine who, unfortunately, we lost about a year ago, named Justin Klein. He used to own several ice cream shops in Seattle named Full Tilt, and they've since closed. But he called me up and he said, hey, we're going to be doing a new flavor. And to launch the flavor, it's going to be named after a band. We're going to have the band actually play our shop in White Center, which is a kind of a little suburb of Seattle. And I was like, well, who is it? He goes, well, it's going to be Mudhoney. And I go, you're going to actually have Mudhoney like come into this little ice cream shop and play. Like there's barely any room to set up. And he goes, yeah, somehow the manager got wind of it. I asked him if the band could come out. He was like, we'll make it happen, and they're going to show up. And so I was the first person he let me in the doors while the band was setting up. And I kind of stood up on a skee ball machine. So I got my spot. And as soon as they opened the doors, people just started rushing in. But there probably weren't, maybe 150 people in this ice cream shop. And Mudhoney played like a 6 or 7 song set. And it was loud as hell, but it was fun as hell.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. That's awesome.
It's wild.
I'll take that over the Hollywood
You've
Bowl.
seen them in two little tiny venues. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think they're number 2 on my list behind Pearl Jam. We've seen them probably about 15 times. So
Nice.
Little addiction with music.
So what are some venues outside of the U.S. that
Yeah.
Well, I got to see Lenny Kravitz. Well, actually, it was Chris Cornell opening for Lenny Kravitz at, I'm going to slaughter this. I think it's the Palais Omnisports. It's French. Saw them in Paris, France, the last night we were in Paris. Saw Pearl Jam, and I've seen Pearl Jam in Vancouver, British Columbia, just at a big arena. And then I saw them in Krakow, Poland, at a big arena, touring arena. But I got to see them in Berlin at an outdoor amphitheater called Waldbühne, and spelled with a W. Amazing show, amazing venue, and some of the craziest shit that's ever happened at that concert. It's just you really should Google it and look at the venue online, but it's got like these big white like tents just all over. It kind of looks like Denver's airport, if you've ever seen that. But they handed out like these big beer holders, like if you wanted to carry like 3 or 4 beers. And at some point during the middle of the concert, people started folding them and throwing them up in the air and figured that they could throw them like boomerangs. And if they hit you in the head, it would hurt. Like, it was crazy, man. Like in the middle of the concert, people started throwing them. But no, really, really great outdoor venue as well. Like great sound for being outdoors. And then I said I wasn't going to mention this, but I'll mention it anyway. When we were in the Bahamas, we actually saw an outdoor concert of the Baha Men doing their famous hit, Who Let the Dogs Out. So it was beautiful because the beach was in the background as they were singing. But yeah, I've been fortunate through the years to kind of get out to, a couple different countries, and I strategically plan vacations around concerts too. So that's how I've gotten to see a lot of that.
Well, it's funny you mentioned seeing the Baja Men in their home country and it being a beautiful background. That reminded me of a venue I forgot. I've seen lots of at the San Diego International Beer Festival at what racetrack is that held at?
Oh shoot.
Del Mar.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Del Mar racetrack. So this beer festival had a stage, an outdoor stage, and so I saw Switchfoot play there, and that's their hometown, and so that was a really cool seeing Switchfoot close out one of the days. So it was the sun's starting to set. You can see the ocean behind them and the sun setting, and just gorgeous. So yeah, that actually reminded me of a venue I had seen, and then I forgot to mention also stateside. You mentioned Fenway. I've seen a show at MGM Music Hall in Boston, and
That's right.
I would liken that to like a House of Blues kind of feel. But really cool venue, but it is literally across the street from Fenway. So I thought it wasn't during baseball season, so I would have loved to have like gone to a game and gone there. But it was really cool. Like after the show, there's a lot of bars and restaurants, and the nightlife in that area was pretty lively. I can only imagine if a game let out also had those crowds mixing. It'd be a lot of fun. There were people talking at that concert as well, and the guy in front of us got into it with the people talking behind us, and I was just like in the middle being like, this is uncomfortable. But eventually everyone worked it out. But yeah, it happens everywhere. But no, that's cool. The around the world stuff. I have a few on my bucket list. I have not seen really concerts outside of the US, but I would love to see in the UK, in London, Royal Albert Hall. There's been just so many classic concerts there, and I've seen a lot of concert films that were shot there. So I think it'd be really cool to see something there, as well as Wembley Stadium in London.
Yeah, for sure.
It'd be a huge, giant show, and that's a soccer stadium primarily, but I'd still think it'd be cool to see a show there. And then going to Ireland from there, Slane Castle, which would be officially one of the oldest venues that we have talked about.
Yeah.
The castle is from the 18th century, so like the 1700s, but it wasn't always a concert venue, obviously, in those days. But there are ruins on that ground that go back to like the 13th century, like a church. But U2 recorded Unforgettable Fire there. U2 did a famous concert there that they recorded live at Slane Castle. Every year they have a music festival there, so when we do our music festival episode, we can talk about that. But so I think since like 1980, 1970, something like that, they've been having, basically, with a few exceptions of a few years that they had to miss it, they've done the Slane Festival on the grounds there since 1981. They've had a yearly music festival, and like everybody you can think of has played that.
I'd vote to do a show on site. I mean,
yeah, road trip, maybe
have to. I mean,
plane trip, but yeah, I mean that we could at least watch the YouTube movie or watch the making of Unforgettable Fire. Just really cool grounds. I mean, as far as castles go, that's actually not an old castle for that part of the world,
Right.
but just only being from the 1700s. But that just everything I've ever seen. I would love to go just tour that and see all of the grounds, and then sure, if I could see a concert there after, that would be pretty great. But just get me to Ireland any way you can get me to Ireland, I'll be happy. And then the last one on my list is Sydney Opera House in Sydney, Australia. I think would be really cool. I'd just be in Sydney, Australia, and be pretty happy at that point. But if I could also take in a concert there, that's a pretty music venue for sure. Graham, how about you? Any worldwide venues? Anything outside of planet Earth?
I've never been to any outside the country.
No, I haven't either, but any bucket
Yeah,
list?
I mean, all the ones you just mentioned. I don't have any other specific ones, but those all sound really awesome.
Man,
Yeah, for sure.
there's tons of them.
there's so many.
Yeah.
Germany, Austria, there's
There's got to be some cool ones in Spain, I would think, too.
Oh, for sure. That's great.
Spain, Italy. There's tons of them.
Yeah, I want to travel. I want to go all over to everywhere and see shows and drink beer in all those places.
I think they have beer in all those places too.
Yeah, and wine.
Well, I haven't been to Denton to see a concert, so I aspire to
Start there and see where the night takes us.
Well, we'll go to Andy's.
Let's try to go to Andy's for sure.
All right, before they close.
Or pour one out.
All right,
go support your local music venues.
absolutely. Yeah, we got to keep these places in business.
It's bittersweet talking about these ones that are no longer with us.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Yeah,
I know
sucks. All right. So moving on, we do need to give an assignment, and I have an assignment for both of you guys. And I know it's a guy, it's an artist who I've probably mentioned to y'all before. Y'all might have heard some of his stuff, but I want you to do a little deeper dive on a Texas artist. He is from Austin, which we were talking about this evening, so there's time. And his name is David Ramirez. He kind of crosses into a couple of different genres. I say definitely singer-songwriter, alt country-ish, but has a very kind of soulful vibe too. I just love his stuff. I discovered him probably maybe 5 or 6 years ago and just have really taken a liking to him. And I know, John, you kind of have a process as far as even first and then most recent or whatever. I would kind of try to steer you maybe away from that typical process on David. I'm not honestly real familiar with his first album. Really his first two. I didn't get into him until later on, like I said, but his second album, Fables, and third album, We're Not Going Anywhere, and then third, fourth, and fifth album are kind of the ones that I've really taken a liking to. That fourth one's called My Love Is a Hurricane. And then 2021, he put out an album that's just like hymns. He just recorded a bunch of like old hymns. So he's about to put out a new album here in, I think, next month or two. So I'm looking forward to that. But I would encourage you guys to check out Fables, We're Not Going Anywhere, and My Love Is a Hurricane. Just check out those 3 albums and see, let me know what you think. I think y'all dig them. I know, John, you're a Jason Isbell fan. I think he kind of falls into that vein, a little bit. But just a great songwriter, and I love his voice, great singer. And I've seen him live a couple of times. He usually plays Tulips here. He's just coming to town and playing in Dallas in April. The venue he's playing is Escape. Oh, it's Kessler. He's playing Kessler. So that may be a show. Catch
24th at the Kessler.
Yeah. So dive in on David Ramirez and give me your thoughts. And I hope you dig him. I think you will.
Awesome.
Will do.
Well, I hope everybody out there enjoyed the show today. I think the 3 of us did, talking about local venues, national venues, global venues, but wherever you live, get out and see some live music and support the venues that are nearby you, for sure, because I think that's what 3 of us are going to do. But
also, if you did a drinking game where you took a drink every time we said venue, you should probably maybe
stop drinking.
Go to the ER right now. Have your stomach pumped.
We want to thank you for watching this episode of Texas Tracks and Taps. So thank you very much for watching. We hope that you like, subscribe, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, follow us on YouTube, and hit all those likies and thumbs up and all that good stuff. And we will definitely try to get a soundtrack or a Spotify and on YouTube for you to listen to as well. But, thanks for listening, guys.
Those who just listened and didn't watch, thank you also.
Yes.
Listening and watching. Doing sign language.
And for those who smelled this episode, again, go to the ER.
Are we on smell-o-vision?
Time for bed.
We are not.
All right, guys. Thanks. It's been a long one, but a good one. I appreciate you guys. taking the time.
Yeah.
And until next time, see you later.
See you guys.